Now the compass swings to swing as Jimmy Dorsey trots out a sparkling Harold Mooney arrangement of a favorite of several seasons back. 3 Little Words.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the December meeting of the Fayette County Board of Adjustments and our final meeting of '09. Ask those in the audience and others to, if you have cell phones, to please either turn them off or turn them to silent mode. Those of you that are here and expect to testify, I'd ask that you now raise your right hands and that you swear or affirm that the truth you give, or the testimony you give here today will be the truth. All right, thank you. Now, first of all, I'd like to ask if there are any cases that are going to be postponed or withdrawn.
Mr. Chairman, I have two cases that have been withdrawn to report. They're actually the first two cases on your agenda. Bottom of page 1, V 2009-76. We have a letter of withdrawal for that. And the first case on page 2, if you flip over, V 2009-86, Anderson Homes for Rent, that has also been withdrawn. We have a letter for that.
Okay, that was in our packet. All right, thank you, Mr. Marks. Now, Ms. Boland, I know that we had this last month. Do we have to take any action on withdrawal case? Okay, all right, sorry. Okay, any other cases to be postponed or withdrawn? All right. I'm going to run through the agenda to determine what cases have objectors present. First case, V 2009-87, Torley Turner. Are there any objectors here for that case? Is the applicant here? Okay. Mr. Salih, will you try and call the applicant, please?
Yes, sir.
You might want to stay till we go through the docket because there might be more than one.
See if there are any others.
Yeah, all right. Thank you. Okay. C 2009-69, Air Evac EMS. Are there any objectors here for that? Okay. Are there any? Is the applicant here? Okay. Now, sir, I'm sorry, I don't recall your name, but I'd like you to go out and talk with the applicant to see if he can address any of your concerns, if you would. Thank you. Okay. And then C 2009-80, Emmanuel Baptist Early Childhood Education Center. Are there any objectors here for that? You're an objector? All right. Thank you. Is the applicant here in that matter? All right. I'd like you to speak with those individuals and see if you can address whatever concerns they might have. So please step outside if you would. C 2009-81, Carla Jackson Stovall. Are there any objectors here for that case? Is the applicant here? All right, you're Ms. Jackson Stovall? Okay, thank you. C 2009-82, Sam Dick. Are they, okay, Mr. Dick. Are there any objectors here for that case? C 2009-83, Sheila Callas. Are you Ms. Callas? Okay. Are there any objectors here for that case? C 2009-84, Lexington Catholic High School. Are there any objectors? You're an objector? Okay. Okay. Is the applicant here? All right, Ms. Wiseman. Let's see. Ms. Wiseman, would you mind speak with those folks outside, see if you can address their concerns? Thank you. Okay. A 2009-85, Larry Morton. Are there, that's a recommendation of disapproval. Are there any objectors here for that case? Is Mr. Morton here? Oh. With the 10th. Are you an objector, ma'am? You're an objector? Okay. All right. Thank you. And let's see. Would you two step outside and see if you can address her concerns? Thank you. All right.
Mr. Chairman, if you could call Troy Lee Turner again, I think he might have arrived.
Oh, okay, great.
I'm not positive, but...
Okay, well, I'll try it. V 2009-87, Troy Lee Turner. You, Mr. Turner? Okay. Let's see. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Marks. So I'll just go ahead and call that case. So are there any objectors here for that case? Okay. Would you come to the podium, please, sir? Mr. Turner, would you state your name for the record, please, sir?
Troy Turner.
Okay. Well, Thank you for being here. Now, the staff's recommended approval, subject to 3 conditions. Have you reviewed those conditions?
I'm not sure I have or not.
Okay, well, you need 2. Maybe staff will have them there for you.
Oh, yeah, I've read that.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Hey,
We have a concern from a neighbor.
Yes, sir.
So you've had a chance to read those?
Yeah, I've read it, and I've read it again, yeah.
Okay. Would you agree to abide by those?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure. Now, I have a question for you. On your application, the reason for your making this application is because you have, entrances straight into the kitchen and causes large amounts of dirt and dust from business behind house to come straight into kitchen. So I'm wondering what business you have behind your house.
We got a beauty college, and there's grocery stores and all kinds of stuff. Plus, when there's no concrete or blacktop out there, and there's a big side door for a mud room, and that's why I wanted that instead of bringing the dirt right in the kitchen where my kids are and stuff.
Okay.
My
So
babies.
that you don't have a business on your property then?
No.
Okay. All right. I was just confused. I wanted to make sure.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Turner? Discussion?
Mr. Turner, I do have a question for you. There was a concern from one of your neighbors. I guess you boxed in another part of your house at some point in time?
Well, that was the porch. I stopped on it before I learned I had to get a permit to do that.
So the picture that we're looking at, the white addition, is that what's being enclosed?
No, it's a side porch
Okay.
on Southport. That was done 40 years ago on the side there.
So you had nothing to do with that?
No, that was
Okay.
there forever.
Okay, very good. What kind of material are you going to box it in?
Siding, white, to match the other side.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay. If not,
I have a question for council. One of the neighbors has raised a concern about the way it would look based on the other side. Do we have any control or power over what it looks like?
No, that's really not one of the criteria with respect to a variance.
If there's no other questions or discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that item 2009-87, Troy Lee Turner appeals for a variance to reduce the required side street yard along Southport Drive from 30 to 21 feet in order to enclose an existing porch in a single-family residential zone on property located at 306 Rosemont Garden be approved with the conditions as set forth by the staff.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Stumbo. Do you have a second?
Second.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Meyer. All those in favor of Mr. Stumbo's motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Motion passes unanimously. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Next case is C 2009-81, Carla Jackson Stovall. Good afternoon. Would you
Good
state your
afternoon.
name for the record, please?
Carla Jackson Stovall.
All right, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
The staff has recommended approval of your request, subject to 5 conditions. Have you had an opportunity to review those 5 conditions?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And do you agree to abide by them?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Now, I want to make clear that prior to doing any construction, you have to get your permit from the Department of Building Inspection.
Right, I understand.
Okay, well, we have people that don't do it that way, so I like to try to remind people.
Okay.
And then I have a question for staff. Is the 6 a.m. start date or start time, is that typical?
It's a little earlier than typical, but certainly reasonable, I think.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or discussion? Okay. If not, then I'll, so I can give, we'll take it, we've got some letters here that we'll let the other board members review.
Mr. Chair, one of the letters, actually, I think a neighbor thinks that you're going to be open till keeping children till 11 o'clock, from 6 a.m. to 11, but it's
No.
my understanding that 9 o'clock,
Right, 9 o'clock.
and only 6 children from 6 until 9? Is that
Right. That's what we agreed on.
amenable?
All right. Is anyone prepared to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend C 2009-81, Carla Jackson Stovall's appeal for a conditional use permit to provide family child care for up to 12 children in a townhouse residential R1T zone on property located 1109 Cologne Way, be approved as recommended by staff, subject to the conditions, the 5 conditions as set forth.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Edwards. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Stumbo. All those in favor of Ms. Edwards' motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Good luck to you, ma'am.
Thank you.
This case is C 2009-82, Sam Dick. Good afternoon. You state your name, please.
Sam Dick.
All right. Thank you for being here. The staff's recommended approval of your request, subject to 3 conditions. Have you had an opportunity to review those conditions?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Do you agree to abide by them?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Are there any questions for this applicant or any discussion?
Mr. Dick, when do you hope to begin operation if this is approved by the board?
We have a lease that starts January 1st, and we hope to open February 1st.
I see that it's going to have a pool. You're going to build a swimming pool?
It's a fiberglass unit, self-contained, 18 by 6, and there's a garage door in the back where it can go in.
I was just curious, that'll be above ground, I assume?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that item C, 2009-82, Sam Dick appeals for a conditional use permit to establish an indoor recreation facility in a wholesale and warehouse business B4 zone located on property located at 320 North Ashland Avenue be approved as set forth with the conditions by the staff.
Second.
All those in favor of Mr. Stumbo's motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Motion passes unanimously. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure. C 2009-83, Sheila Collis. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Would you state your name, please?
Sheila Kalis.
Kalis, okay. Sorry about that. Ms. Kalis, the staff has recommended approval of your request, subject to 3 conditions. Have you had an opportunity to review those conditions?
I have.
And do you agree to abide by those?
I do.
Now I have a question for you. How long have you been open at this current location?
A little over 5 years.
5 years? Mm-hmm. And why is it that you didn't get a building permit?
I was unaware that I needed one. I was an existing business that moved from a different location, and it was not in my radar that there was something not right about that.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for this applicant or any discussion? Okay. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve Sheila Kalis' appeal for conditional use permit to establish an indoor recreational facility in a wholesale warehouse business B4 zone on property located at 324 North Ashland Avenue, based on the staff's recommendation and subject to the 3 conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Griggs. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. All those in favor of Mr. Griggs' motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay. Motion passes. Good luck to you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, the airbag's still outside. We got a man.
Okay. I'll just start. No worries, sweetie.
Larry Morton's here. All the other objectors are out on the hallway still.
Okay.
Here comes back.
Okay.
No, that's not the place. Baptist Church.
Which applicant do you represent? All right, thank you. And these 2 folks here, you're the objectors over there. So I'll since you're in here, I'll go ahead and call you both, call your case. So I'll call C 2009-80 Emmanuel Baptist Early Childhood Education Center. Would you come forward, please? First of all, would you state your name, please?
My name's Kelly Hale. I'm the director of the Early Childhood Education Center.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Hale. Now, what I'll do is I've got a couple questions for you. First, the staff's recommended approval, subject to the 4 conditions. Have you and your parish reviewed those conditions?
Yes, I have reviewed those.
Okay. And would you and your parish agree to abide by them?
Yes.
Okay. Now, we do have objectors, so we'll have to hear this matter, unless you're able to, I presume you're still objecting?
We came to an agreement, if I can present that.
Well, sure, please.
Their concern is a concern of mine, too. Lexington Christian Academy also meets at our church, and between the hours of like 8 and maybe 8:40, and then 3 and 340. There's a lot of traffic on Mount Tabor Road. Our preschool program comes in at different times. We come in at 9 and leave at 12. So we're not in that traffic time. But it is a concern because of the traffic on Old Mount Tabor Road. And adding that many cars, going from a capacity of 75 to a capacity of 171, is a lot. However, the reason we have the capacity of 171 is just state licensing said, you have this much room, we can license you for that. I don't ever want more than 108 children there on any given day in my program. And so we said that if we can decrease that number to 108 children, we're fine. And the other item that I will do with my families for our preschool is the majority of them, I'll ask them to use our Tates Creek entrance rather than the Old Mount Tabor Road entrance.
Yeah, and I'm trying to visualize Old Mount Tabor, at where that meets.
There's a speedway there.
Okay, all right, that's what I was trying to.
And so the there are those three big churches, and we're the one in the middle. And so it's just easier, when LCA comes in and leaves in the morning, it is very, very crowded and it backs up. And so even though we come in at a slightly different time and leave at a different time, the majority of my parents will ask to come in on Tates Creek so it won't build up.
Well, I appreciate that. Now, would you come forward to the podium, please? Would you state your name, please, ma'am?
Hi, I'm Shirley DeBoer, and represent Heatherwood Townhomes. We think if Emmanuel will do what she's proposing, that would work for us. We would like to see them use Tates Creek more. Old Mount Tabor is a very short road. It's become like an expressway through traffic, and the speed limit's 25, and there's no one that goes 25. And so when you add, the students that are there now, it's really bad trying to get out and go to work in the morning. It's just really hard to do in both directions. So we were very concerned about adding more students until she explained that they would be coming in at 9 and leaving at 12.
Okay.
So.
And you're okay with amending the number from 171 to 108?
Yes.
That would satisfy you?
And we'll just have to trust them that they'll use Tates Creek Road.
Okay. Now, I've got a question for staff. It sounds like they've reached an agreement, which I appreciate, doing our work for us, so I appreciate that, because it's always better when you guys figure it out than when we do. Do we need to amend any of the other recommendations other than number 3? I guess all we can do is recommend that the parents use the Tates Creek, but I don't know that we can enforce that.
I think, I'm looking at Ms. Boland about enforcement of that. I think it can be encouraged. It will be very difficult for the building inspection folks to enforce that, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question too. Is it safe to encourage people to go in and out of Tates Creek? I mean, there's less traffic on Mount Tabor. I mean, Tates Creek is a pretty big road.
Yeah, there's not a lot of less traffic on Old Mount Tabor. Believe me, it's very, very busy. And I understand going into the church should not be a problem. I think exiting onto Tates Creek could be a problem, because when people come out of the church, if they're going to turn left, they cross Tates Creek, and we've had a lot of accidents. So, we understand that probably coming out Old Mount Tabor might be an option, but at least get part of them going in on Tates Creek. They're coming in towards town anyway. That's an easy, I'm assuming.
Excuse me, is there, I can't recall, is there a signal at Mount Tabor?
Yes, there's a signal.
Okay. All right.
There's a signal. And, well, this is not the place to bring it up, but the church does not have any kind of a turn-off lane on Tates Creek. And that's a problem when they turn right into the church. I mean, they just right off the street. So I think we'll bring that before the council. That might.
Excuse me. Mr. Gallimore, do you have any insights you'd like to share with us?
I guess the only thing is, it does seem to be a good idea to ask parents maybe to use the Tates Creek entrance more so than the Old Mount Tabor. but I think typically people are going to want to use the route that is most convenient for them to use. So you can ask, but I don't know how persuasive that will be for parents to change their route unless you can come up with some type of incentive. You might think of some way of expressing them out if they use Tates Creek versus Old Mount Tabor, or a special line that has priority to leave the school or something of that nature. But I just don't think just asking the parents to change their route will be that effective. It is a little bit hard to tell when the school expands. You would tend to think that the traffic patterns are just going to get amplified, that the increase in enrollment is not going to come from a particular section of town where Tates Creek may be more conducive. So I would think that you can probably expect increased congestion on Old Mount Tabor and proportional to the amount of increase in the enrollment.
Okay. From the 30 or so kids.
I draw maps for my families at the beginning of the year, and I tell them which entrance to go in. If they go in another entrance, they can't get in the car. I mean, they really can't get in the car line, so they will need to use the Tates Creek entrance. A few of them will need to use Mount Tabor, but that's a lesser number. But the majority of them, I draw maps. I say use the Tates Creek entrance and go around this way. So hopefully that'll be, some of them don't obey, but most of them do.
All right.
We just would like to know that the 108 student limit would be enforced.
That's fine.
Absolutely. We're going to change. We're going to change it on the conditions on number 3. I don't know if you have them there, but we'll change 171 to 108, and then we'll be able to exceed 108 without coming back here, and you will receive notice if they ask for that, just like you did this time. So that'll protect you.
If we could make sure any motion for approval reflects the reduction of the 171 to 108 too.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion?
I didn't understand the 9 to 12 hours because it looks like this daycare will be operating from.
It's not a daycare. It's a preschool. It's just a personal thing I want you to know. We are open from 7 to 6. From 7 to 9, I probably have 10 to 12 students who come in one at a time, and then the bulk of all my students are there from 9 to 12, and then I have a few who will stay till 2 o'clock, and then I have maybe 20 in an afternoon who stay till no later than 6 o'clock. So those are our operating hours, but the majority of the children are there 9 to 12, and that's when our car lines are. They're at 9 o'clock and they're at 12 o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
Is that helpful? All right. Ms. Hale, don't run off. Okay. Any other questions or discussion? No? Okay. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that C 2009-80 Emmanuel Baptist Early Childhood Education Center appeals for a conditional use permit to expand the preschool capacity from 75 to 108 students in a single-family residential R1B zone on property located at 3100 Tates Creek Road be approved as recommended by staff and subject to the 4 conditions with the amendment of condition number 3, the enrollment shall be no more than 108 children.
Both parties understand the motion? Now that the condition's been amended? Okay. Final answer? All right.
I'll second.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Griggs. All those in favor of Ms. Meyer's motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you all for working together to resolve this. Appreciate that. Okay, now, it looks like the folks from the air evac case are back in. Were you able to resolve the differences? Okay. I'm going to have to abstain from that case, so I will move it to the end of the agenda, and we'll take up the other cases first, so you know. Are is the applicant in for the Lexington Catholic High School case? No? Okay. Okay. What about the Larry Morton case? Okay. And were you able to work anything out? Okay. Would you come forward to the podium, please? I'll call A 2009-85 Larry Morton. Good afternoon. You, Mr. Morton?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you for being here. Were you able to address the objector's concerns?
The concerns of the objector was a fence that she would want put up between the properties. Okay. They own the property that's I guess if we're facing a unit beyond the left-hand side of my property.
Okay.
And she just want me to put a fence in between that if we were permitted to have a child care.
Okay. And you'd agree to do that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the staff has recommended disapproval of your case, so typically what we do is we'll let them present, and then you can respond to it.
Sure.
Okay.
This request is an administrative appeal to overturn a decision of building inspection, which basically was that a child care center can't be permitted in an R2 zone, a two-family residential zone. This property is located on Florence Avenue. It is in an R2 zone. This is a picture of the duplex that was constructed, I think, about 1988. The appellant is interested in changing the use on this property with that existing building from a residential property to a child care center. The zoning ordinance allows child care centers in an R2 zone only if they are accessory to a church or a school or a private club. All three of those things are conditional uses themselves also. So it's pretty much as simple as that. He's asking for something that the zoning ordinance, by the letter of how it's written, doesn't allow. In his application, he stated that he thought that converting the use would be an upgrade for the neighborhood and reference to, I guess, some historical problems with drug trafficking. So there wasn't really anything there that we could sink our teeth into in terms of, looking at, how the zoning ordinance was written and interpreted. So we could not support his request.
Okay. Thank you,
I can put up the language from the zoning ordinance.
Well, and that was my question. The Article 8 or -11E. I'm thinking that must have been written by a lawyer because I just don't understand that. I'm sorry.
Let's put it up on the overhead and
Okay,
I'll try
that'd be
to.
helpful.
We might have to blow it up there if we can. It was. Okay. If in the ordinance, the conditional uses for R2 revert back to what's allowed in R1A. So this page is from the R1A.
Okay.
A conditional use for child care center. If we go up to the top right part of that, is that the language you were talking about? It's allowed if it's accessory to a church, school, or private club?
No. The next paragraph, paragraph E, states that all other uses other than those listed as principal, accessory, or conditional. It's in our packet information if you can't find it.
Okay. That basically just says that unless the use is substantially similar to some other use that's permitted in some fashion, then it's prohibited.
Oh, okay. Kind of a catch-all if there's something else that's closely related.
Right. And we really couldn't find anything even close that might be considered substantially similar to what the applicant was requesting.
Okay. No. Mr. Morton, do you understand exactly what they're telling you?
I understand pretty much what they're telling me, but what my concern is that I've owned property in that neighborhood. I've built 3 or 4 duplexes. I built this duplex here, and it's been tremendous hardship in regards of having one unit vacant, maybe the other one occupied, maybe a year of no one in the unit at all. And my concern is coming down, is pretty much where, as a retiree and looking at a unit that's in good shape, it should be occupied, but the area, if it's been blatant by criminal activity and it has subsided quite a bit. That's one of the reasons I'm down here now. And I think in this area there's a need for a child care center. That people don't have access to child care, but I think it'd be a good facility for people that maybe be able to use it in the neighborhood in terms of just having a place to go, giving a child another way of getting educated, just helping our youth. I have another facility that I own, and it's a daycare, and people been in it for 4 years, and they know how well I take care of the property as having a facility as a daycare. So what I'm basically asking you all is, I'm paying taxes on these properties that I'm not able to even to get any kind of decent return on my money. As a daycare, I will look at pretty much maybe a property that I can lease for X amount of years, or it's a property that I may be able to use as a business myself. It's just been a hardship, and I have some information in regards of people I turn my taxes over into. He's got a letter here, what I'd like to maybe present, pretty much stating what I'm saying to you all.
Mr. Morton, let me jump in here and ask a question. In the R2 zone, would he be able to use this property for any other business-type purpose other than a daycare? Because the way I understand it is that because of the way your property's zoned, the daycare would have to be a part of something else. It'd have to be a part of a school, church, or private club. And certainly I don't know you, but it sounds like a good idea, but we as a board don't have the authority to grant what you're requesting.
There's been daycare facilities in this particular zone.
Okay.
There's been one right up there on the corner of Price Road and Georgetown Street.
Okay. Well,
there's other businesses that's right in that's I don't know if it's been approved. That's right there. There's grocery stores. There's boarding houses.
Well, let's let Mr. Marks answer my question.
I can't tell you for certain for any specific property, but I would suspect that some of those are grandfathered. They were approved many years ago. In residential areas, you could have, years ago, child care centers in residential zones.
Okay. So if they were applied for a long time ago, okay. So, but as far as applying today, is there any, are you aware of any business opportunities you could pursue in an R2 zone?
Mr. Chairman, the major uses of that type in R1 and R2 zones are things like home offices, which have square footage restrictions, and they're basically accessory to an individual dwelling unit.
Okay.
No signage, no outside employees, no additional parking. The other is a conditional use called a home occupation that do come before the board almost on a monthly basis that involve notice, and they also have square footage limitations and restrictions on parking and outside employees. And like a home office, they too are accessory to the use of the property as a dwelling.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
I also have something from someone in regards to the accessory use as far as having a church there. I have a letter from a pastor that said they would like to use the facility. I don't know if they would have to have approval on it. It's a lady that owns, not owns, but she's the pastor of a church. Want to know if it's possible to use use the facility as for her own purposes, and that the daycare on this unit would be accessory to that church.
Now, let me ask the question. Would the church need to be located on the property?
Well, that would certainly make it a lot simpler. There have been a handful of cases the board has considered, I can't think of any real recently, but maybe a couple of years ago, and then several longer ago than that, where that specific issue did come up, where I think it was adjoining properties. There was a case where a church had an adjoining lot and wanted to use something that was only allowed as accessory. I think at that time, building inspection said since it was separate lots, it couldn't be considered accessory, but the board overturned that, at least in a couple of cases.
Okay.
I think the church he's talking about is not adjacent. It's several lots away.
I'm talking about the church that's, that would be on the property itself. So I'm not talking about anything that would be any blocks away. I'm talking about a church. It's 744 Florence Avenue.
Okay.
That would be a conditional use request for a church.
Right. So you can't ask for that as an individual, but the church certainly could, is the way I understand it.
My question is the conditional use for daycare. Could you help me on that? Because when I applied as far as trying to get a daycare, is there a conditional use for that property? Is that something I can come in and apply for a conditional use?
Well, you as an individual can't, is the way I read the statute here, but a church could, if it was located on the property, could operate a daycare, if I'm hearing the statute.
What was the conditional use where you pertain to, sir?
It's called a home occupation. It's a...
and so you have to live there?
Yes.
Anything else you'd like to present, sir?
No, I just wanted to present just pretty much it's a hardship in regards to some of these properties that's located up here in the end. And I thought there was as having hardship, that was something you all would consider.
Well, we certainly do consider it, but it's just the ordinances, the way they're drafted, just don't allow us, even when we wanted to, we couldn't grant the relief that you're requesting. Okay. So, are there any questions for Mr. Morton, or any discussion? Okay. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, Mr. Morton, I wanted to commend you for what you're trying to accomplish in that area and upgrading that property and so forth. And we certainly can empathize with you regarding the economic challenges that you're facing. However, as the chairman has indicated, we do not have the authority to approve your request. And so, unfortunately, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion, administrative review, item 2009-85, Larry Morton. Appeals for an administrative review of the Division of Building Inspection's refusal to allow child care center that is not accessory to a church, school, or private club in a two-family residential R2 zone on property located at 744 Florence Avenue. I would like to make a motion that we uphold the staff's recommendation for disapproval.
Could I ask you another question, sir? Even though I know that I have been disapproved, I have a concern. This is kind of costly, me coming down and paying someone to send out letters and just going through what I have to go through to talk to you all. Whom would I need to talk to in regards of getting a conditional use as far as maybe someone's interested in having a church on that property?
That's a very good question. You need to talk to the Division of Planning. That's who Mr. Marks and Mr. Salih, that's where they work. And it'd be wise for you to take your idea to them, ask them for any assistance, and kind of get it all worked out before you came back to us.
Private club, same. Who would I need to talk to on that?
Same folks. Church, school, or private folks. A private club, it'd all be through the Division of Planning.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Hope you all have a nice day. And I appreciate your time, sir.
All right. You're welcome. Have a good weekend. Now, we've got a motion by Mr. Stumbo. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Ms. Moore. All those in favor of Mr. Stumbo's motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, motion passes. Okay, thanks. All right, Ms. Wiseman, I'm got to abstain from the air evac case, so I'm going to put that on the end of the agenda. So I'm calling your case to see if you were able to work out anything.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm Rena Wiseman for Lexington Catholic, and we met with the owners of 2333 Southgate, Ms. McAtee and Mr. Poor, her husband. Ms. McAtee's owned this property for many years, and they had two issues, and the church had a meeting with the neighbors, and there were some things talked about that weren't quite fleshed out to their understanding. Their two concerns have to do with storm drainage in the area, and we have a part of the stormwater management plan that we're implementing is an improvement that will pick up water that's currently getting in their backyard and diverting it into a pipe that goes to another catch basin. So we've explained that to them. They've seen the conceptual plan. We have discussed that plan with the Division of Engineering through EA Partners, and they agree that conceptually that will work in terms of the projected volumes, rates of runoff. So that will be part of our proposal. The second thing that they're concerned about is they back up to home plate, and we have a 30-foot backstop, which is a pretty substantial backstop, but nonetheless, they tend to get foul balls in their backyard. So part of our proposal is we're going to put in a new backstop that's 50 feet tall. It'll go from end of dugout to end of dugout that we think will greatly reduce that problem. So they're here. I believe they're still here. We wanted to make sure that they agree with all that. And with that explanation, we are in agreement with the staff report and the conditions that the staff have presented. We also presented 10 letters of support to the staff that we wanted to put in the record as well.
Certainly, certainly. Okay. So I guess first of all, staff, based on what Ms. Wiseman stated, do we need to review any of the recommendations?
I think the condition we had in there about stormwater as worded will be satisfactory.
You got enough wiggle room to...
The only thing we might want to clarify is just for the record that if it is approved, that it includes raising the height of
that would be fine.
to 30 to 50 feet for the backstop or that area of the fence.
Okay.
Catch thing.
Okay. That's sure with that. Well, would that be a fifth condition, or would you just add that to number?
Not really a condition, I don't think. Just so building inspection doesn't get caught blindsided by something that's...
You just add into one of the other conditions then? Okay. Mr. Silly's working on that. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Wiseman. Now, you're the objectors, aren't you? Would you come forward, please? Thank you, Ms. Wiseman. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Would you state your name, please, ma'am?
Velma Jo McAtee.
Okay. Ms. McAtee, thank you for being here. Now, you heard what Ms. Wiseman presented. Does that satisfy your concerns?
Satisfactory, yes.
Okay. Well, just and so, as long as we get what she stated into the recommendations, you're willing to withdraw your objection?
Correct.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for working with Ms. Wiseman. I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
We've added a little bit of language on condition number 1 to address the height of the net.
I'll read that since it's a little blurry. The athletic complex additions and renovations shall be completed in accordance with the submitted application and site plan, including an increase in the height of the backstop from 30 feet to 50 feet. That's in addition to condition number 1.
Okay. Now, Ms. Wiseman, is that...
Yes, we're in agreement with the revised conditions.
Okay. All right. Now, I guess I have a question for the board. Does anyone think that we need to review this matter?
Mr. Chair, I am concerned about the drainage. it looks like there was lengthy discussion when they had their last conditional use from the staff report back in 2000. He noted there was recurring water drainage problems in the area. Through these meetings they've had with the neighborhood, they've become aware of lingering water drainage problems, and they're saying they're going to work on it again. So I think working on it but not solving it is part of their history, and I think we ought to review this in 6 months or a year or after a rainy season, and if it's not solved, they need to continue working on it.
Any objection from your folks?
The only thing I would like to respond to that is
Certainly.
that there are drainage problems in the area, but a significant amount of them are not the making of Lexington Catholic, because there is no drainage system in that area. There's only the nearest catch basins are at the foot of the hill on Barclay Drive. So once the water leaves our property, it does tend to pond on several intersections, but there is nothing that can be done to solve that from our engineers unless the city would extend sewer lines to get to the catch basin. So we'll come back for a review, but I think we need to define the problem, because if the problem is ponding on Southgate and Sheridan and those streets, that's a situation that occurs today and will still occur regardless of what we do on Lexington Catholic.
Do you have drain basins on your property, or is there water that falls on your property that sheds off onto adjoining properties?
We have in the front, it's a different watershed, we have drainage basins along Clays Mill Road. In the back part, the field turf is over 10 inches of crushed stone that essentially the entire field acts as a detention basin. So that retains the water, and it ultimately goes into a pipe that was installed by the church in early 1993, 1994, and goes into a outlet that ultimately goes on to Southgate. But the problem is that once it leaves Southgate, there's no pipe to take it. But so we do have on-site detention, and we control our water as it leaves the property. But our water gets mingled in with all the other property on the streets that is not being detained or retained and has nowhere to go.
Well, it looks like from these staff reports that they are wanting you all to work on the drainage problem, which must mean that some of the drainage problem is because of your acreage.
I don't know if anybody's from engineering is here. We've met with engineering. I'll let the staff respond to that, but I think we are handling what we can handle that we are creating. It is an issue with an old county neighborhood that does not have storm sewer conveyance facilities.
Okay. We've got stand-in for a replacement for Mr. Brock.
Nobody could replace Mr. Brock. I'm here anyway. We have met with Mr. Hatfield from EA Partners on 2 different occasions to look at the drainage plan that they're planning to implement. Ms. Wiseman is right. The lack of storm sewers in that area contributes a lot to the problems that we see out there, but obviously that's not their situation to have to fix. So, we're happy with the proposal that they brought forward. Of course, we'll review that more thoroughly as time goes on, but with what they've proposed so far, we are okay with that. So.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions or discussion? No. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that C 2009-84 Lexington Catholic High School's appeal for conditional use permit to expand the athletic complex facilities in a single-family residential R1C zone on property located at 2250 Clays Mill Road, Council District 10, be approved for the reasons recommended by the staff and subject to the 4 conditions recommended by the staff, with an addition to the end of 1, including an increase in height of backstop from 30 feet to 50 feet.
I second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Moore. Mr. Stumbo. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'd be in favor of some type of inspection of the drainage solution that they decide to use after it's been complete. If it doesn't work, I think they should be asked to go back to the drawing board.
Ms. Moore, would you care to amend your motion to include that? What?
Do you think that's necessary?
I'd like to see some results from this drainage plan instead of neighborhoods that are still suffering from the water coming off this property.
I mean, our requirements state that they have to release the water at a rate that is equal to or less than what is currently coming off the site. Okay, so when they do their drainage study, they're looking at ways they can detain the additional water that results from adding impervious surface and making sure that the rate that that water leaves that site is equal or less. Now, they've demonstrated that. Now, how that we prove that after the fact could be very problematic because we're looking at historical storms that we may never exactly get again. You know, each storm's different and the intensity and all that kind of stuff. So, to be honest with you, I don't know how we could prove that, and that may be a huge burden to start requiring that of every developer to prove that, you know, so.
Well, and got another question, I guess, from Mr. Hume. If there are substantial problems, your office would be notified, wouldn't it?
Yes, if we have complaints on that, we will certainly notify engineering and the applicant and can possibly report back to this board.
Okay, so we can have a revocation hearing?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got you on the watch then.
Thank you.
Okay. Does that help, Mr. Griggs?
I just hate to see a site be enlarged, and if each time you work on the site the stormwater problem is lessened, then that would be one thing. But it looks like there's a history of the stormwater problem being the same or worsening, so it's hard for me to support it.
All right. Well, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, I'll call all those in favor of Ms. Moore's motion to signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. And all those opposed? It's 5-1. Motion passes. All right, thank you, and thank you, objectors, for working together to resolve this. So, as far as I know, that's the only case that remains is the air evac case. So, if Mr. Stout is not here, who is our vice chair, I'm going to ask Mr. Stumbo to step in and wing it as assistant vice chair.
I didn't realize there was such a thing.
I just made it up.
I thought that it would go to the next officer, and that would be the secretary.
Yeah. So I wish everyone Merry Christmas, and see you in 2010.
Very good. You too, Mr. Brown. Thank you. So the applicant is here, and I know that you all went out and tried to discuss and resolve your issues, and that was unsuccessful, correct? Okay. I'd like for you to go ahead and approach the podium.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Your name, please?
Excuse me?
Your name?
Mike Kelly.
Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly, before you begin, I'd like to ask Mr. Marks if he would discuss the staff's finding. I know you all made a site visit out there, and could you kind of recap that for us?
Yeah, we actually, one of the neighboring properties arranged for a test landing of the helicopter on site, which 2 staff members attended and observed. The main purpose of that was, at least for the neighboring property owner, to determine what kind of impacts from noise and possibly when there would be from the landing of the helicopter. We talked directly with the property owner who was there, who was inside her office building, which is just to the west of the subject property. And she didn't notice much noise at all. She was satisfied that there would not be disturbance from noise. There really wasn't much disturbance at all from wind unless you were really close. So that really didn't turn out to be an issue. On site, we also had a chance to meet a representative from Kentucky Department of Aviation who works closely with FAA on permitting of these types of facilities. They had a pretty high comfort level that this was a suitable site to establish what they're proposing for a helicopter refueling station. So that was good to hear from them. Of course, they still have to go through that process of getting permits from FAA. and a bunch of other permits that we've listed in our staff recommendations under conditions. So we are recommending approval.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Marks. Mr. Kelly, you've seen all the recommendations that staff has set forth. Do you agree with that?
Correct,
You
yes.
agree with all of those?
Right. We already started it. It's, the filing is a 7480-1. And at the beginning of that process, Mr. Steve Marcosi that Mr. Mark spoke about visited the site. And basically, he sends his recommendation to, in this case, it's the ADO, which is the Airport District Office in Memphis, to a Stacy Hardaway. Now, and then she does an airspace study. And the outstanding issues are with the existing facility. There's an air ambulance facility there located approximately 240 feet to the northwest. Mr. Marcosi saw no issue with that at the time. He made that made the commission aware of that at the time, but since then I got his report and sent it on to the commission so that it wasn't just my, they weren't taking my word for it. But our potential neighbors voiced some concern over safety, and I want it to be known that in our industry we've seen in the past 2 years just a rise in helicopter accidents. So in no way do we, by wanting this approved, want the statement to be that we diminish our request or need for safety as well. That's paramount. It goes without saying. But again, the ultimate decision as far as our proximity to theirs will be answered and decided by the FAA.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Kelly? Thank you, Mr. Kelly. We'd like to hear from the objector. If you'd please come forth and state your name.
He wasn't here for the swearing in.
Good afternoon.
How you doing?
Just fine. How are you? Your name, sir?
Pretty good.
Your name, please?
Kelly Shaw.
Mr. Shaw? You were not here for the swearing in?
No, sir.
Would you raise your right hand? Everything you're about to say is going to be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm Kevin Mims.
Mr. Mims? Okay.
Well, in our discussion out in the hall, our complaints are just, like he said, it's safety. As far as I know, Mr. Marcosi, whoever has never talked with us about the volume of aircraft, the volume of flights that come in daily out there throughout the day, throughout the night. And according to Mike, when we were talking out, Mr. Kelly, out in the hall, they have switched their proposed flight plan, which I'm not privy to be to the right. So there is, according to him, around 50 foot between the existing concrete plant and then our helipad. For you, those of you that are familiar with helicopters, if you take a 206 L helicopter they fly, I don't know what the rotor diameter is, 30 foot, 32 foot? 37 feet 4 inches, and he's putting that in a 50-foot space. Okay, so he's going to fly over the concrete plant. So in between the concrete plant and our facility. So he's saying, but there's only 50 feet between our facility and the concrete plant. So you're putting 37 point some foot in a 50-foot area, and you got a helicopter here and a helicopter here.
Hold on just a second, Mr. Kelly. Let Mr. Mims finish.
Our concern is the safety because nobody's talked to us about the volume of traffic we have. Plus, they're putting 37-foot rotor diameter in a 50-foot space. If something happens in the summertime, things get hotter. Those things don't fly. It takes more power to lift them off. If they have an engine failure, where are they going? They've got a 50-foot space, and if you've been out there, the existing heliport of our property is 3 foot And in that 50-foot span way, you got a 3-foot area that is difference. If he lands in there, is he going to fall over? What's he going to do? Where's he going to land? He's going to have to come on our property, either where our helicopters are sitting or in the middle of our hangar. That's our concern. And based on the volume, the other thing is that Mr. Kelly was saying that we would need to monitor each other's radios. Well, you get pilots flying in and out of there every day, talking to each other, talking to make sure they're out of the way of each other, and then you add another confusing, in my opinion, confusing part to that. You got a lot of chances for rotors hitting. And we don't need a midair, we don't need anything. We've been there for 20-some years. We know what it takes to go in and out of there. And I just think it's a bad idea simply because they want to fly. And part of that, that 50 foot that they're going into is 37 point some foot. Something happens, they're coming down. I just don't see any way around it. Mr. Shaw is with PHI. He can speak more to the volume of traffic that is out there daily, but Mr. Marcosi's never even talked to us about the effects of traffic. If you talk about traffic in a truck or a car is one thing. You take a traffic in a helicopter, it's something completely different. If I got to slam on the brakes in my car, I'm going to spill my coffee. If I've got nowhere to go in a helicopter, somebody's going to die, and that's just unless they're really, really good.
Excuse me, are you part of PHI or?
No, sir, I'm the property owner.
So you don't have much experience with helicopters personally?
Oh, I got all kinds of them. I ran that helicopter shop for since day one, since it was there. We used to have thoroughbred helicopters out of there. We worked on everything from the state's helicopters to coal miners' helicopters to private individuals.
So are you an A&P?
No, but I am a pilot.
Okay.
I'm aircraft single-engine landing helicopter rated. Used to fly out there for East Kentucky Power, flying power lines. So yes, I'm very intimate with all the operations that are down there. The other thing is that you stated on here what I would like to see, and I don't know about PHI, but you were talking about you put on here that they would only fly a certain type of helicopter. That's fine. If they get anything bigger, then the rotors are bigger, and there we go over that. So, I mean, what's to say that something is not bigger? If they're going to they're going to limit their size, that's fine. If you all make that mandatory, that'd be a great thing. I've got a couple other things here.
I have a question about the volume of traffic out there existing that's daily now.
Right. That's up to you.
Okay.
And
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to know just how many takeoff and landings are out there, now.
The aeromedical business, no one really knows what's going to happen. I'm out there every day, and I'll go sometimes 3 days, we will not have an aircraft come in. And then the next day, there could be as many as 7 or 8. So we don't really know what's going to happen. They come in 24/7, various weather conditions. And the other thing, with the changing of they come in different directions. And the fact that that's uncontrolled airspace, there's really nothing been mentioned about how these guys are going to communicate. And, a lot of bad things can happen. If you remember on the news a couple years ago, 2 helicopters were going into a hospital, uncontrolled airspace. They had a mid-air collision. That made national news. We don't want that. And this is, I'm concerned about, everyone's safety. The other thing that I find very peculiar to me is Fayette County is a very large county. Why on earth is the only place they want to put this right next to us within, 200 yards? They're saying, I think it's closer than that, but 200 feet. To me, it just makes no sense. Why, if everyone's talking safety, why would you want to put it right next to us, knowing that that is jeopardizing safety? They sit there and say, safety, safety, safety. Well, that's fine and dandy. You can say it all day. But until you make the effort to prove safety, all you're doing is talking. That's just my opinion, but
Well, in our staff report, staff learned that there's a 10-mile radius around the airport where communication with the airport is required, and a 20-mile ring around the airport where communication is advised. Staff learned from AirVac pilot that was present that as a practical matter, most helicopter pilots begin communication with the airport at about 30 miles out. There are serious implications regarding the pilot's license if he or she violates the 10-mile rule, and most pilots consider the advised 20-mile communication area as law. So, so it seems to me that there is communication that's going on.
Let Mr. Belinsky handle that. He's a pilot, I'm a mechanic.
Well, I am too, but the reason that we put that out there in the first place was because anytime you have to talk to air traffic control, you are under their control. They're going to move you, they're going to push you, they're going to do stuff to make you go different ways to suit the patterns. The reason it's out there and outside that 10-mile ring that you were talking about is because we don't have to talk to them, because we can go straight to it and land without having to talk to anybody. That's why we put it out there in the first place. That's why we have it out that far, because we service Eastern Kentucky, Northern Kentucky, Southern Kentucky, and Western Kentucky. But Western Kentucky, they would fly to the south of Lexington, bam, come right in, and they'd sit down, and that's what we do. You don't have to talk to them. Yes, if you're in that 10-mile ring, you better be talking to them. If not, you're in deep trouble. But that's why it's there, is because we don't have to communicate. Because as a courtesy, not only do we not have to communicate, but it's a courtesy to them, since we were in helicopter. When I put it out there, talking with them, I had friends that were air traffic controllers and friends that were at the airport. They would rather not talk to us if we're out of their airspace, because they're not responsible for us. And sometimes, as a courtesy, depending on their traffic, I might call them from 30 miles out, say, hey, I'm going to the helicopter shop. And they would say, no problem. And a lot of times, they only want to talk to you. You're not in their airspace. They might tell you the wind, the temperature, boom, see you. Frequency change advised, do your own thing. So you don't have to talk to them. And that's one of the sole reasons it's there, is for speed and convenience and cost savings. Because I used to fly a lot from Frankfurt here. Well, sometimes they would divert me when I talked to them. They make me fly over midfield of the airport. So I'd make a jag this way and then come back up here when I could go in a straight line. So that's the whole gist of that.
I have a quick question for staff. Is the FAA aware of the two helipads or heliports or whatever?
From what the representative with the Kentucky Department of Aviation told us directly, yes.
Okay, and they actually study the safety?
Well, that's the point I think is important here is, our issue before you is mainly a disturbance issue as far as the legal parameters go, making sure there won't be a disturbance to a neighboring property. The safety issue is paramount with, I assume, with the FAA when they do their permitting. So, and none of us here are experts in that. That's why we rely on other agencies to put conditions in your all's approval to make sure that they get those permits. So.
Mr. Mims, is there anything else that you'd like to add? Does anybody have any other questions for Mr. Mims? Thank you, Mr. Mims. Mr. Kelly, would you like to respond?
Just a quick correction of some information. When we scheduled the fly-in, there had not been, PHI had not posed the opposition. Therefore, they were not notified. We did that for Carmelie Kramer. She was the one that was concerned about the wind turbulence and noise impact. So, he made reference to Mr. Marcosi not contacting them. At the point that I scheduled that, and Mr. Marcosi, see, when he does his site inspection, it was just coincidence that I had him there the same day. When he contacted me, I said, yeah, I have a helicopter coming in. My point is, we were not trying to slight this company in any way, keeping them from any information. The second point that I wanted to clarify, when you submit the 7480-1, you use the prevailing wind as part of your primary approach and departure. The FAA has the latitude to change that however they feel is best suits the safety of that operation. In this case, the primary approach and departure is actually deflected in the opposite direction from the PHI. So, and of course, we all know that it's the governing wind changes that decide which way we're going to come and go. So, but anyway, based on the wind direction, for the most part, we'll be flying away from their operation. We don't want anyone to think that safety is not our primary concern, and I can't answer the question that he posed about why we chose this location. We have people that it's based on where our flight volume comes. We fly into the hospital, and of course, then we fly back out, and we like to fuel up. So that's the reason that they chose this location, and that's about it.
Very good. Anybody have any questions, more questions for Mr. Kelly? Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Mims, anything else?
It just depends on when his fly-in was. I objected earlier.
Okay. Thank you. Well, we have heard from both the petitioner and the opposition, and if nobody has anything else, staff, anything else you'd like to add? Okay, thank you. Well, I know in the recommendations, obviously, everything has got to be, this is just the first step in a long process that the FAA will certainly be very much involved with and permitted as far as whether or not this is going to become a reality. So there are a few other steps that have to be taken, and this board is being asked to approve or disapprove the recommendation from staff. So at this time, I'd like to recommend or ask if there's a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve C 2009-69 Airvac EMS Inc. appeals for a conditional use permit to construct and operate a helicopter refueling station in a light industrial I-1 zone on property located at 501 Blue Sky Parkway, Council District 12, as recommended by staff and subject to the 7 conditions outlined by staff.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Griggs. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you both. Good luck. I'd like to ask if there are any items that the board would like to present at this time.
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
I have a letter of resignation that I am submitting. I have already presented it to the chairman. I will give it to planning, Mayor Jim Newberry, council members, LFUCG planning staff, and fellow Board of Adjustment members. It is with a great deal of regret that I must resign my position on the LFUCG's Board of Adjustments in order to accept an appointment to the board of the Kentucky Housing Corporation. It seems that the Ethics Commission flagged this as being in conflict. I don't see it, but I'm not on the Ethics Commission. I have enjoyed serving and have certainly learned much about the workings of my city. The members of the board and the staff are fantastic and serve our community in an exemplary fashion. They are dedicated and thoughtful, and has truly been a pleasure meeting and serving with all of them. I would like to thank all of you for the opportunity you've given me to serve. And that would be effective after this meeting.
Well, I'm sorry.
Well, Ms. Edwards, that comes as a bit of a surprise to us, and all I can think of is thank you very much for the time and the effort and the years of service that you have given to this Board of Adjustment and to the Lexington and Fayette Urban County community, and we wish you the very best at Kentucky Housing Commission. So congratulations on that new appointment, but you will be missed. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything?
I'd like to wish the the staff and the other groups a Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Very good. Does the staff have anything that they'd like to communicate?
Mr. Stumbo. Also, we would express Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's to everyone on the board and other staff members. There is a training opportunity available to board members before your next meeting on the afternoon of Wednesday, January 20th. In the Division of Planning offices, there will be another APA audio conference at 4 p.m. that afternoon. The title is Performance Measurement and Transportation Planning, which is certainly an issue that other staff members I know will be attending and learning about. Also, Ms. Edwards, we certainly are going to miss you, and the staff and the community appreciate your service and just wants to thank you for all you've done for your time here on the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sally. Well, with that says, the next meeting will be on January 29th, 2010. We will see you all next year. Have a very Merry Christmas, and this meeting is adjourned.